Some people wear their entitlement like armor. It shields them from reason, reflects accountability, and gives them the delusional confidence to treat the world like a stage built solely for their comfort. That's how I describe Karen, the self-declared queen of our gated community, reigning from her faux brick porch with a clipboard in one hand and a phone in the other, ready to call 911 if a shadow dared step on her hydrangea border. I'd moved into the neighborhood barely 3 weeks before she launched her campaign against me. My house wasn't even fully unpacked yet, half my clothes still in duffel bags, the garage a maze of taped-up boxes labeled kitchen, cables, and who knows. But from the moment I backed my truck into the driveway and stepped out with a badge clipped to my belt and a legally owned firearm secured to my hip, I became her obsession. I work in law enforcement plainclothes officer assigned to the department's Violent Offenders Task Force. After nearly a decade working undercover, the department finally gave me the option to transfer to a quieter district and take a residence-based support role. A mix of desk duty and field work. The house was perfect, secure, secluded, close enough to respond if needed, but far enough to finally relax. I thought I'd get a chance to breathe. But Karen had other plans. The first few days were all smiles and fake hospitality. She showed up at my door with a lemon bundt cake, her mouth stretched into the kind of grin that doesn't reach the eyes. "Just a welcome gift," she chirped. "We like to keep things orderly and friendly around here. This is a peaceful neighborhood. We keep tabs." I should have known then. She wasn't welcoming me, she was sizing me up. Over the next few days, I caught her watching from her front window as I moved gear into my house. Tactical bags, locked. Crates, and the occasional glimpse of sidearms were enough to kick her paranoia into overdrive. I overheard her whispering to other neighbors, using phrases like dangerous energy, armed stranger, and military-type behavior. Then the anonymous HOA complaints began. First, it was visible weapons being carried into a residential home. Next, it was excessive nighttime garage activity. By the third complaint, accusing me of operating a private security business without a license. I went to the HOA office myself and asked to speak with the board. That's when I learned Karen wasn't just a concerned neighbor, she was the acting HOA vice president. The president was a kindly old man who rarely showed up, so Karen ran the board like a mini police state. And I, ironically, had become her most wanted. Still, I tried to be patient. I responded to each complaint formally, provided documentation, and even gave the board a redacted version of my department credentials just to settle the rumors. I explained that I was an active duty law enforcement officer and that all firearms were registered and legally stored. I wasn't running a militia. I wasn't hoarding weapons. I was simply doing my job. But Karen wasn't interested in facts. She was interested in control, and I had disrupted her fragile illusion of it. When she realized she couldn't remove me through HOA policy, she decided to escalate. It started with harassment. My trash cans were mysteriously knocked over every Friday morning. My mail was tampered with, letters arriving opened or folded awkwardly like someone had peeked inside. My security camera footage showed nothing, of course, because Karen was careful. She operated in the blind spots, her movements as rehearsed as a stage actress in community theater. Then came the false reports. One night, I was watching TV when a squad car rolled up to my house. 2 officers stepped out, looking confused. "We got a call about domestic violence," one of them said. I raised an eyebrow. "I live alone." After a brief sweep of the house and a shared laugh, they left, clearly annoyed they'd been dispatched for nothing. It happened again 2 nights later, this time a report of suspicious chemicals in my garage. Then a third call claiming a hostage was being held inside. That one brought tactical units. Full vests, lights, guns half drawn. I had to flash my badge and stand outside with my hands raised to stop a breach. It was humiliating and dangerous. I was lucky I didn't get shot on my own porch. After the third false report, I contacted Internal Affairs and filed a formal complaint against the misuse of emergency services. But proving who made the calls was tricky. Karen used burner phones and routed her calls through spoofed numbers. She was crafty. She knew how to stay just outside the line of legality. But she didn't realize something critical. I wasn't just a cop. I was trained in investigation, surveillance, and counterintel. And now she'd made herself my case. I set up secondary security cameras, tiny, discreet, with motion-activated recording and wireless feed backups. I planted a decoy box labeled sensitive materials in my garage and put a motion sensor inside it. I created a dummy routine left the house at the same time each day and parked 2 blocks over to return on foot and watch. Within 5 days I caught her. One morning, she crept onto my porch, tested the doorknob, then stepped into the side yard and tried to look through the window into my garage. A day later, she came back with gloves, slipped into the yard, and opened the decoy box. The moment she did, a silent ping went to my phone. I watched from down the block as she rooted through packing paper, clearly disappointed she hadn't found some kind of arsenal or evidence of wrongdoing. That night, I compiled the footage, photos, timestamps, and audio. Then I called my department liaison and asked a simple question. If someone breaks into your yard and tampers with your property while actively falsifying police reports, what's the procedure? His response: if you have the evidence and want to proceed, you have every right to make the arrest yourself. So I waited. The final straw came the next weekend. I'd hosted a barbecue, nothing big, just a few off-duty friends, mostly guys. From my unit, 1 or 2 spouses. Karen watched from across the street like a gargoyle on a rooftop. After everyone left, I stepped outside to lock the gate and saw blue and red flashing lights coming up the street. Another 911 call. This time, armed men in tactical gear planning something violent. The responding officers recognized me immediately and waved it off. But I didn't. I walked across the street, stood on her lawn, and knocked on her door, with a confidence I hadn't shown until now. She opened it slowly, looking both ways like I might be recording her. Yes? She sneered. I held up a folder. You're under investigation for misuse of emergency services, trespassing, harassment, and falsifying police reports. She laughed. You don't scare me. Tough guy. You think your little costume and fake badge mean anything here? This is private property. I took a step forward, flipped open the folder, and revealed the photos of her on my property, her tampering. With the decoy box, her speaking to the cops after each false report. Her face blanched. I'm placing you under citizen's arrest, I said calmly but firmly, under Penal Code 837. You're being detained for a felony crime committed in my presence and on my property. She sputtered. You can't arrest me, I called the police. I smiled and said, and now they're going to be here to collect you. Right on cue, the same officers who'd responded to her latest fake call came walking up her driveway. They saw the folder, heard my statement, and after checking the evidence I'd compiled, one of them handcuffed her right there on her own front steps. She screamed, loud enough to wake half the block. He's a criminal. He's running a militia. He forged those photos. But no one came out to defend her. Not one neighbor. They all knew. They'd all seen. Her reign was over, and she knew. As she was led away in the squad car, I stood there with my arms crossed, watching her shriek through the window. The officers promised to follow up with formal charges and recommended I file a restraining order. I did. The court approved it in under 48 hours. Karen was barred from approaching my house, my car, or even walking her dog on my side of the street. She violated it once, stood on the sidewalk and screamed profanity for 10 minutes until another patrol unit hauled her away for contempt. That was the last time I saw her. 2 months later, her house went up for sale. Rumors swirled something about her being forced to resign from the HOA permanently. Something else about a pending civil suit from the city for wasting public resources. I didn't care. I just knew I'd reclaim my peace. The new family who moved in, lovely. 2 kids, quiet, friendly, no clipboards or binoculars in sight. And me? I finally unpacked the last of those boxes, sat on my porch with a cold beer, and watched the sunset settle over a neighborhood finally free of tyranny. Karen may have left in handcuffs and humiliation, but I knew that people like her don't just disappear after a single defeat. No, the Karens of the world don't walk away quietly. They regroup, rebrand their grievances as injustice, and come back with sharpened claws. That's exactly what happened 3 weeks after the squad car took her from her front lawn. I'd just returned from a long shift assisting on a citywide warrant sweep when I found an envelope taped to my door, no postage. No handwriting, just my name typed in bold, capital letters. Inside was a formal complaint. Not to the HOA this time, not to the police department either. Karen had gone a level higher, or so she thought. She had filed a civil suit against me, accusing me of harassment, unlawful detainment, slander, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She even added a note at the bottom of the complaint document in shaky, angry penmanship. You can't hide behind your little badge forever. I stood there on my porch, holding the pages, barely resisting a laugh. It was absurd. Every shred of my actions had been legal, documented, and corroborated, but I wasn't stupid. I knew. The civil system didn't always reward the truth, it rewarded procedure. And Karen, bitter and vengeful, had found herself a lawyer who didn't care whether her story made sense, just that it had enough loopholes to drag me into court and bleed me of time, energy, and resources. She claimed I assaulted her property rights by illegally surveilling her house with my cameras. She claimed I had fabricated photos using AI. She even claimed that I had threatened to shoot her dog, a Pomeranian named Sir Fluffsworth, who had never set foot near my yard, except once to pee on my mailbox. She filed for damages totaling $75,000 and requested a restraining order against me, accusing me of being a dangerous paramilitary individual who was unfit to live in a residential community. I could have ignored it. I could have laughed it off and let it collapse in court, but I also knew better. You don't let a Karen build a narrative in your absence. So I called my attorney Mark, a sharp, no-nonsense former JAG officer who'd been handling law enforcement cases for over a decade, and I handed over everything. Every photo, every timestamp, every video file, every piece of metadata that tied Karen to the false 911 calls, the trespassing, the tampering, the harassment. He reviewed it, whistled under his breath, and said, "We're not just going to win, we're going to bury her." Court was scheduled 2 months out. In the meantime, Karen took every opportunity to play victim. She started telling neighbors I was under investigation for stalking, that I had been suspended without pay, and that I was one bad day away from being on the news. None of it was true, of course, but the whispers began again. Some neighbors stayed friendly, others became cautious. That's how toxic she was, like a virus that infected trust itself. I decided to fight fire with sunlight. I hosted a community Q&A, opened up my home, explained everything with proof, and let them see the video clips themselves, her entering my yard, opening my box, peeking through my garage window, making fake phone calls. After that, the narrative shifted hard. Even the old HOA president showed up and apologized, saying he had no idea how bad things had gotten under Karen's leadership. When the day of court arrived, I wore my dress blues, not to intimidate, but to remind everyone exactly who I was. Karen showed up in a pristine white dress like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. Her lawyer, a guy named Brent, who looked like he practiced law out of a strip mall, tried to look confident, but the bags under his eyes told another story. The judge, a stern woman with a silver bob and a reputation for no patience for nonsense, called U.S. to session. Karen's team went first. They leaned into the emotional manipulation hard. Karen took the stand and cried. Literally cried. She talked about how my presence made her feel unsafe in her own home, how she feared for her life every day, and how I had weaponized my authority against an innocent civilian. She even had a folder of grainy screenshots she claimed were from my cameras but had been clearly altered. In one, I was holding a rifle that I didn't even own. In another, she claimed to show me following her down the street, which was actually a reversed video from her own security camera where she'd been following me. My attorney stood, waited for her to finish sobbing, then calmly walked up with a thick binder. "Your Honor," he said, "what the plaintiff just presented is a fiction. Allow me to show you a documentary instead." One by one, he played the surveillance videos, unedited, time-stamped, dated. He pulled up audio clips from the police calls. He even presented the internal affairs reports verifying my status, my background, and the legality of my actions. When he dropped the final bombshell video of her being handcuffed for filing a false report, the courtroom went silent. The judge sat back, stared at Karen, and asked, "Would you like to revise your testimony, Miss Plimpton?" Karen turned red, then purple, then back to white. "It's a setup," she mumbled. "He hacked my system." "Actually," my lawyer replied, "we have a warrant-backed forensic report from a digital investigator confirming. This footage is from his network, his system, which Miss Plimpton repeatedly accessed without permission." The judge didn't even let Brent rebut. She banged the gavel and dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning Karen couldn't refile even if she wanted to. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. Once Karen's suit was dead in the water, Mark turned to me and said, "Let's go on offense." Within a week, we filed a counterclaim for defamation, harassment, invasion of privacy, and abuse of legal process. We attached receipts, all the police reports, the videos, even the HOA complaints that matched the timeline of Karen's known actions. We also added a claim for punitive damages, citing emotional stress, threats to my professional standing, and public slander. Karen, still stunned from her courtroom defeat, didn't even respond to the countersuit initially. Her lawyer filed a late answer, tried to settle out of court, but we refused. I wanted this on record. I wanted it to sting. During the next hearing, Karen looked haggard, makeup half smeared, dress wrinkled, hair frazzled like she'd aged 10 years. We didn't even have to say much. The judge already knew the game. After reviewing the full docket, she awarded me $42,000 in damages, enough to cover my legal fees, home security upgrades, and then some. She also issued a court-mandated order that Karen was not to initiate any form of contact with me, digital or physical, for 5 years. Violation would result in jail time. The expression on her face as the judge read the decision? Priceless, but karma wasn't finished with Karen yet. Not long after the judgment, the local news picked up the story. A short segment aired about a disgraced HOA vice president caught abusing emergency services. They didn't use her full name, but everyone in our neighborhood recognized her house on the B-roll footage. She became infamous. Grocery stores got awkward. Local reel. Estate agents started steering buyers away from her street. One of the few remaining allies she had on the HOA board resigned. Another petitioned to remove her property from the neighborhood entirely, citing her as a liability to the community's reputation. Eventually, she cracked. One morning, I woke up to find a moving truck outside her house. She stood on the porch, barking orders, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She didn't look at me, didn't speak, just vanished into the cab of the truck and rode away. That afternoon, a "for sale by owner" sign went up, and a week later, she was gone. Like a fever finally broken dot in the aftermath, things got better. Calmer, safer, I hosted another barbecue night out of spite, but to remind the neighborhood what it felt like to be part of a community that wasn't ruled by fear and pettiness. People came, people laughed. Some apologized for ever doubting me. One elderly neighbor even handed me a peach cobbler and whispered, "Thank you for slaying the dragon." I smiled, not because of pride, but because I realized something important. Standing up to bullies, especially ones who hide behind fake rules and fake tears, is never just about you. It's about everyone they trample on their way to the top. And Karen, last I heard, she tried to move into another HOA community across town. It didn't last. Word travels fast. They Googled her name. They saw the court records. She was denied entry before escrow even closed. Turns out no one wants a dictator on their cul-de-sac. Especially not one who tried to weaponize 911 against the very person trained to answer those calls.